hazardous waste permit includes regulation, or it should include regulation, of what happens to the high-level nuclear waste tanks at Hanford. Over 1 million gallons of deadly liquid high-level nuclear waste has leaked from these tanks, and there are miles and miles of contaminated piping and 177 tanks that need to be decontaminated. The Energy Department is going to want to just put dirt over the top of them after they're emptied, but that leaves massive amounts of deadly chemical and radioactive wastes that ought to be cleaned up. So that's very important for us to look at and urge people to comment on, saying clean up the leaks and the contamination that is left in the tanks and the piping. Then there are 40 miles of unlined ditches into which radioactive wastes were dumped at Hanford. So picture Interstate 5, picture 3 lanes from Portland all the way down to Salem and beyond. 40 miles, picture 50 feet deep, filled with radioactive waste and chemical waste drums, haphazardly disposed, with no records of what was disposed where. The Energy Department's plan is just to leave them there, covered with dirt. But we know that the wastes are already leaking and will keep coming out, and some of them spread chemical vapors that are poisonous. Carbon tetrachloride, chloroform, lots of other chemical wastes are moving into the air from these barrels, and even cardboard boxes, of course the cardboard doesn't exist anymore, and wooden boxes into which radioactive wastes were dumped in the ditches. This permit, under our federal and state hazardous waste laws, should require them to find out what is in the ditches and cleaning it up, not covering it up with dirt and walking away. The permit we would like to see include monitoring wells all around these ditches. That's what the law says is supposed to happen. To avoid that, the Energy Department has proposed, and the Washington Department of Ecology is agreeing, to only regulate small little segments of the ditches into which the Energy Department admits it dumped radioactive chemical hazardous wastes. But we know that a lot of other places in these ditches had chemical wastes, and besides which, they all mixed together anyway. So you can't just regulate 10 feet of a 40-mile ditch. You've got to regulate all 40 miles of these ditches. And you have to have monitoring wells for the soil and the groundwater all around them. That's what a good permit should require. Right now, the language we've seen does not require that. So it's very important that people say, let's get the waste out of these ditches, let's monitor them until we get the waste out of them. And it's not okay to just cover them with dirt. And then the biggest issue in the hazardous waste permit is, are we going to allow the Energy Department to use Hanford as a national hazardous radioactive waste dump? Or are we going to say you have to clean up first? And you cannot add any more waste as long as these ditches and the high-level nuclear waste tanks and the 1 billion gallons that were discharged from them is going to contaminate the groundwater already. You don't get to add any more. That's the cleanup first principle that ought to be in the permit. Governor Gregoire of Washington said, I promise the permit will cover this, but the permit doesn't, so it's really important for people to send in their comments to the Governor of Washington saying, this permit should honor your commitment to clean up Hanford and not allow any more waste to ever be disposed here. That's your commitment. The Department of Ecology needs to live up to it. Send your comments in.